Hi, this is Rabbi Orlofsky. Welcome to the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. And whether you're watching with our friends over at Torah Anytime, or wherever you watch or listen to your podcast, as always, it is a pleasure to have you along. And this is, of course, the second installment of my interview with Rabbi Nissel about his book that he wrote about Rabbi Moshe Shapiro, and our discussion about Rabbi Moshe Shapiro and about his book. And I hope you enjoy it. And the sponsor for this week, sponsored by the Rabbi Orlofsky Seminary Fund, in honor of Rabbi Orlofsky's dream to open a seminary, and in honor of Mommy, Daddy, Rachel, Gittel, Esther, Zev, Bracha, Ora, and Shira. Well, Mitzvah Hashem, we should open up a seminary and do good things. What can I tell you? I always wanted to open a yeshiva, I always wanted to open a seminary, but I'm terrified about the fundraising. So if anybody wants to sponsor me to do something meaningful in this world and make like a really great seminary or yeshiva that nobody will come to because my rules will, of course, be completely unreasonable. So we're looking for you. And now the second part of my interview with Rabbi Nissel. I thought it was you who told me in the Friday shir that before they would start, Josh Hartman would just sit there and tell Rabbi Moshe jokes. Just whatever jokes he had, you know?
Yeah.
So,
yeah, but that was incredible. So most of the, listen, there was only once that I heard Moshe tell a joke. He told just because it was funny. But I just, again, the point where he went,
so this move, anytime he tells a joke afterwards, he does this, the fingernail trick.
Yeah.
Which evidently there's some accord that this is supposed to get you to become more serious and stuff like that.
Right.
You know what the McCoy is for that?
No idea.
But did you ever hear that?
Yeah, we should ask Rabbi Rodman. Anyway. So I asked you, because you're the Moreh D'Shmaitza of laughter, right? Rav Kook's the Moreh D'Shmaitza of Kedusha. You're the Moreh D'Shmaitza of laughter, and you wrote beautifully. You really did write beautifully over there. You did try and you made a very powerful point. Maybe you can just expand for our audience just a little bit about what you saw in Moshe's laughter and Moshe's sense of humor, because sense of humor is not just making
he loved to tell jokes.
It's not just telling jokes.
I could tell. You see, I have no control over it. It just comes out. You know, you ever read comic books? So in the X-Men, there's Cyclops, who has these like lasers that shoot out of his eyes, and he has to wear special glasses to control them. Otherwise, he would just burn up everything, you know? So I can't control it. I try. Even when I try to be serious, a joke comes in, even if I don't mean it. In fact, when I was in NCSY, there was one regional director who said to me, "You know why everybody hates you?" I said, "I didn't know they do." He says, yeah, everybody hates you. So he says, because I can make the kids laugh, and I can make the kids cry, but I can't switch back and forth like you do, where you can be like very, funny and then get very serious and then tell a joke and then get back to serious. And then, so you can see it. Reb Moshe was holding him, like you talked about the kelm, that control. He was holding himself back because he loved to tell jokes.
Yeah.
And he was just... And he was tremendously funny, and he worked very hard to keep it under control.
Let me tell you something I'm going to regret telling you.
He used to work in the nightclubs in the Catskills.
No. So I actually, because listen, what can I tell you? This is one of the things that everyone loves about you. Okay, you make us all laugh. Moshe made us laugh. So I actually wrote at the end of the book of laughter some of the funniest lines I heard from Moshe over the years. Now, I don't know if you know this, but this book, Rabbi Aaron Lapiansky, who I was zuchah to give him a copy 2 weeks ago in Silver Spring, he was the gadol Omed Agabov. Art Scroll and Feldheim, they would not let me write this book unless I had a grown up in the house. So Rabbi Aaron Lapiansky, he literally read it from cover to cover. And he said, this you should take out. It's not muchubad. And I realized he was right.
With the jokes?
Yeah, just to write. It was here and there, I would put in a funny line, but to have like a section about Ramesh's, the jokes that he told.
Which put out of Kuntrus now. Ramesh's funniest lines.
He had a lot of them, and his puns and his thing, they're just genius. Some of the and they were instant and whatever it was. The point is that he made me take it out. So Baruch Hashem, I had you to write that little thing about Ramesha.
He had he says Pamchat. I was driving with this fellow, and he's holding the steering wheel. And with the steering wheel, he looks at me and he goes, "Schar halicha b'yadai." And he thought that was so funny. He loved it, But he told the story once he was talking about an Osher.
Right.
It means to be an Osher. He says, so there was this fellow, wealthy fellow, and he said he was selling newspapers, and saving up his money, and eventually he started selling this, and he built it up, and then his father died and left him $100 million. And everybody went crazy. And Roger stops. And he goes back, But you can see he would have just worked the room for the next 15 minutes if he could.
And he was also a master storyteller.
Because I'll tell you something interesting. I was not that successful in yeshiva. I know this will come as a complete surprise to you. But because they didn't know that I had dyslexia and ADD and all the other different problems that I was battling with.
And you had chavrusas like me.
No, that was already when I was an adult. I'm thinking about back then. Everything was terribly difficult. So at one point, I won't mention which yeshiva I was in, but someone asked the yeshiva, who's the best guy in the yeshiva? He says, Orlofsky. He says, Orlofsky? He says, what do you mean? What are the reasons why I was not the best guy?
Yeah.
So he says, first of all, whenever you explain something to him, he hops it right away. He says, second of all, you hear his jokes. You know how fast his mind has to work to come up with those jokes. So if you're very smart, memela, you're funny.
It's true.
So Rabbi Orlofsky, when I was by him, also loved to tell jokes. Rabbi Moshe Shapira, he was just a fountain. But he kept it under control. It was that discipline. Right. But he loved to tell jokes. It was, I would hear him all the time. I don't remember what I wrote, so you'll have to remind me.
It's in the book. It's there.
I believe you.
No, but the point you made is that overwhelmingly, you always felt that there was always a message in the jokes. There's always something you could learn out of them. That was your chiddush. That he would not just tell jokes because they were funny.
Oh no,
but
for
it
sure.
was part of his chinuch message. It wasn't just to make himself interesting.
I had a woman once in the Yerushalayim when I was giving shir, and she goes, I told you shir over to my husband. I said, very nice, because you don't understand. I can't remember shirim. I don't have a head for it, but I remember stories and jokes. And from your shir, if you remember the stories and jokes, you can recreate the shir. I used to give a parsha shir in seminary, and it took the girls, one girl, took it towards the end of the year. I'd always start with a little story or a joke, etc., and then I'd give us my questions and that, and then I would give the answers, So one time a girl says, 1 second, I know the answer. It's always in the opening joke. Because you come back and say, that's why. What was the opening joke?
Yeah.
That's where it's going to go. Of course. In other words, you remember he would always say pshat. Now this is the tefach and this is the tefach sochek.
Right.
Because when you laugh, you open up.
Sure.
So if you can, laughter opens you up to be able to hear new things. So that's why there was this tremendous tension because of his emphasis on kavod Torah to keep things very serious, And the same token, he himself was just loved to have.
Yeah. And when he was dealing with the Bali Tshuva, so there he was extra. Like when the really beginners, so apparently when he was in Russia, the Russian kids did not understand who he was. Later on they did, the more senior ones did.
Most people didn't know who he was. But someone told me a story. This guy is walking in New York, and he comes up, he sees a guy who looks like a rabbi. He's a regular Orthodox guy, I guess we can use the term modern Orthodox, I don't know, but he wasn't yeshivish, And he sees this guy, he thinks he's a rabbi. He says, excuse me, are you a rabbi? He says, yes. He says, can I ask you a question? He says, yeah. He goes, how come when you go to shul, there are more Kohanim than Levim? It doesn't make any sense. There should be a lot more Levim than Kohanim. So, unbeknownst to him, this was Rabbi Moshe Shapira.
Right.
He only found out later. So he goes, Ken, ki Shevet Levi is a midas adin. And therefore, din is always sholit on them. And that's why throughout the generations, Levim are always getting cut down because since they represent din, they get din. But here, you just see this guy on the street and you say, excuse me, are you a rabbi? You know what I mean? And just ask him a question. Our friend Zav said to me something once that I think sums up who Rabbi Moshe is. He says, I've met people who know everything before, but I never met anyone who has a mahalach in everything.
Right.
So not only does Rabbi Moshe know everything, but he's thought about it. And whenever you ask him anything, so I never had this experience, but Zav would have it. When he asked him something, he goes, "Nu ma domer." So he would say his pshat, and he goes, "Nochon, aval yoter mizeh." He would take it to another level, you know.
We had a friend. You and I know a friend. He told me not to write the story, but he said that him and his chaver, they worked on Mishnais Mikvos for a whole year. Mishnais Mikvos. Part of a. He said at the end of the year, they went in to say over their shtiklich Torah, what they came up with on Mikvos. They went to Rav Moshe, and wherever they ended, that's where Rav Moshe began. And Moshe started to adding more levels, and they all left like that.
You told that story to me when you were driving him on a Friday, and you started to say over your chidushim in Megillas Esther.
Right.
You know, something about this and the Tachrid, I just go, Moshe is a pashut, Menachem is a pashut, or Manu is a koze. So, of course, they didn't say it, but he had this line a number of times, and this was one of the amazing things of Rabbi Moshe, is that he would say, somebody asked a question, he goes, "You can't figure that out for yourself? I have to tell you that?
Right.
I gave you enough information." And he was very big on making you become an adult. Right. My son went before Sukkot, and he was having a very hard time in yeshivas, and he was complaining about the system to Reb Moshe, and Reb Moshe only backed him up and added to it, you know? Yeah. I mean, he said, Olam yeshivas the mamash son.
Are you going to say what he told?
I don't care. You know me.
I don't know this guy.
ואני לא חושב שיכול לתקן, אני חושב שצריך לפרק ולבנות מחדש. Now, that's pashut to anybody who has half a brain. That's not a big chiddush. It's politically incorrect, but it's for sure true. Everyone knows that the system is broken, you know, but he'll say it. So he says, so what do I do? I says, what do you do? So take care of yourself. You're right. There are no yeshivas, there's no mashgichim, none of this. So do it yourself. It was a eye-opening sense of where he was into empowering you, right, and forcing you to work for Klal Yisrael.
Jonathan,
both Rabbi Tatz and Rabbi Becher were here in Or Sameach, speaking to groups of like 8 people, and Rabbi Moshe hounded them to go back to America or to England and go and do something for Klal Yisrael. Right. And they didn't want to leave. They wanted to be in United States. He says, no, go and do something.
He did the same thing to me. He wouldn't let me leave Memphis. Remember that story?
No.
Oh my gosh. He did not want me to leave Memphis, Tennessee. He said, you stay there. This is where you belong. He was sent all of us out. You remember during that South Africa when everything was falling apart, he told everyone to go to South Africa because it's a time of Eis Ratzon. He saw what I was doing in Memphis. And I had to leave Memphis for my oldest son, for Yehuda Michal. And he was not happy. And he made...
You said he was the most educated Jew in Memphis at that time.
Yeah, okay, let's not go that far, but yeah.
No, the second you left out the Greenblatt.
Besides the Greenblatts, that's true. But Moshe, who took care of me in Memphis, he really did. I used to call him up regularly and buy him chaboros, and he really did take care of me there. He felt I should stay. He made a terrible prediction about what would happen if I would leave, which I'm going to tell you afterwards.
Mm-hmm. You don't want it on the...
I do not want this. I'll tell you afterwards what he said if I left. And the next Purim, after I came back to Eretz Yisrael, he gave me that I don't want to see your face. And then he turned to Yehuda Michal and he said to Yehuda Michal, you should know that your father bringing you back to Eretz Yisrael was the best thing he ever did.
Wow.
And that was his breath. That was for Yehuda Michal. It was the best thing. For me, he felt I should be in America. He always told me I should be in America. God help me.
There was a school in America that wanted me to become the dean. I had four schools, 1,000 kids in it, you know, in all the different schools. But it was co-ed. So they were offering me the positions. I asked Rabbi Moshe. He says, if you can separate the boys and the girls, you can chazek the boys in learning and the girls in Amunah, then you should take it. I said, but how do I separate it? He sat with me for almost an hour. How we work out the gym, how we work out the lunchroom, how we work out the office, how we work out all this stuff, you know? And he says, and that's the proposal you should make. So at the time, there was no way I could move my family back to America. So I'd become one of those commuting, you know, abbas, you know what I mean? Where I go and live in my mom's house. Hi, I'm You know, and I'd come home and see my family once every month or two, which probably would have helped my kids. But you know, so I said to him, I said, but Ramesha, I don't want to go. You know, it's too hard. And he says to me, Reb Dovid, we don't go where we want. We go where we're needed. And I can't be mevater on 1,000 kids. So I said to my wife, I said, Moshe said, I got to take the job. So I went and I told them I have to separate the boys and girls. And they said no. Dodge that bullet.
End
you know
of
what I
story,
mean?
yeah.
But I was ready to do it. You know, if that's what Moshe told me. And he had this keen sense of Klal Yisrael and making people stand up. So the point that I wanted to get to is, so he was in the mirror, and you were going to tell a story about
This
his
is
learning.
many points ago. The last point we made was about how his.
It reminds me of a story. Yeah, so he's in the mirror. You were talking about his learning.
Yeah, so my opening story is Reb Nachum Parsha. Reb Nachum was the great genius of the mirror. Reb Nachum, if you think that Reb Moshe was tough, Reb Nachum was tough on a different league. I had to take out some of the part of the stories about how he would deal with the guys. People saw how he would deal with the guys. Reb Nachum was very, very tough. In his younger years, he was super, super charif. And people would come up to him, ask him the question, and 10 seconds later they would come scurrying back to their standards. But when Moshe get up to speak to Reb Nachum put on a big smile. And that was it. That the rest of the morning Seder, there was like a fireworks display. It was the two of them were at each other, and Reb Nachum adored Reb Moshe. And they called Reb Moshe in those days, in the mirror, Reb Aaron Malin the Zweiter. Reb Aaron Malin the Zweiter. Reb Aaron Malin was the genius of the mirror that went to America from Shanghai. And they saw in Reb Moshe that he was going to be that new mirror genius. It never happened. Because Reb Moshe never, ever stood still. He always went to the next place where he could glean from. And
So where did he go after the mirror?
So I don't remember. You have to look it up in my book.
I thought it wasn't a biography.
Yeah, it's in the biography. It's in the book over there. But I'm pretty sure he at some point he went to Tel Aviv afterwards to learn by Reb Michal Feinstein. He wanted to get from him as well. And each one he got a little bit of a different thing. So he's the only person I know that was a gadol that became that combined 4 different strands of Lomdus, which was Panovich, and then Chevron, and then Mir, and then Brisk. Okay, because he also the Brisk and the Brisker.
When did he get into the Briskerov?
So his connection with the Briskerov was really one-on-one on Motzei Shabbos. He used to go for years while he was going in Chevron to be there for Havdalah and to stay there afterwards. And actually, most of the time that he spent with the Briskerov, he chose to be silent. He was just watching the Briskerov, every single move, every single nuance to what he could learn from the Briskerov. And the family holds that the Briskerov was the Dmus Dyukna that was in front of Ramesha everywhere he went.
No.
It was the cover, the person that Brisker side to him. But it's incredible when you think about it. When you mention those 4 yeshivas, and this is without even mentioning what he got in Chassidus, and the fact that he had a charusa with the previous Amshinover Rebbe. So he was yenik from all the different types of Chassidus as well, all in one person. And that is how he built himself. One of the things that I never heard of that Jonathan Rosen wrote kindly about me in his little Mishpacha article that you should read. You should read. He said something.
I only read the kichels.
Okay.
If there's no pictures, I don't read it.
Okay. I'm a Mishpacha writer, so... But I also go to the kichels first. Okay,
That's right.
But he said something very, very true. He said Ramesha never wanted Talmidim, quote, that would just rearrange the furniture, unquote. He never wanted people just to say Ramesha said.
Right.
He wanted us each to be a makar, right? Each person should create their own Torah through their own understanding, to take from Ramesha and then build themselves through that.
That's why when I think it was Dave who brought me to Reb Moshe, he says, Reb Moshe wants people who are going to go out into the world and do things. Because
Right.
he wants to build not just Talmidim, but build people who are going to be mashpia on the world. Not just
Correct.
people who are going to take care of themselves.
Correct. So that's why on the cover, I wrote through the lens of one Talmud, because I want the reader to know they're hearing my voice, how I
Right.
saw Reb Moshe, even though I'm trying to teach Reb Moshe, but it sounds like Menachem Nisl. I did that on purpose. Just like a Kivatatz sounds like a Kivatatz in his farm, even though the main source is Reb Moshe. And
It's the
Reb
South African
Schmalzer-
accent.
in the South- Yes, let's go a little bit deeper.
Let's get a little deeper.
and then Reuven Schmelzer, which is this incredible magnum opus on the Yom Tov and the Afik Yamayim. You're hearing Ruvi. That's who you're hearing when you read the stuff. He writes beautifully. That's, I think, what Rav Moshe wanted.
It was too big.
Yeah, he wanted us.
You can't capture Rav Moshe.
Yeah, and honestly, the Vilna Gaon, if you read all his Talmidim, so if you read Nefesh HaChaim, it doesn't sound like the Gra. There's Rechaim Bolazhna, and then you read Menachem Mendel Mishklav, it sounds like Menachem Mendel. So everyone, they recreated the Gra.
Well, that's what they said about the Baal Shem Tov. The 10 of original Rebbes each took a midah of the Baal Shem Tov and worked on that because he was too big.
Right.
You know,
and that was the 4 Talmidim of Rabbi Melech Melizhensk. One took his eyes, one took his mouth, one took his brain, one took his heart. And so I think that's where Moshe wanted.
Said that to me, David Cohen, about Rav Hutner. He says Rav Hutner was too big. He says, Rav Aaron Shechter got his Talmidim, and Rav Yonis and David got his Torah, and Rabbi Freifeld got his Neshama.
Wow.
And I got his sense of humor.
He said,
David Cohen.
I was by Reb Dovid 2 weeks ago. I gave him in his hands the Sefer, and he told me something beautiful, which I wish I would have known to be able to say this in the Sefer. He said that after Rav Hutner passed away, the only person he could listen to that would be an echo of what he used to get out of Rav Hutner was Rav Moshe. Yeah. He told me that he adored Rav Moshe and adored his Torah.
Now, how did he get the kesher with Rav Hutner? Where'd that come from?
So that was at a later stage.
Because he was a Rebbe Beis Talmud.
Yes, it's Beis Talmud. So there you had Rav Dov Schwartzmer and Rav Hutner.
I heard the story that he was young.
Yeah, can you tell the story? Because I'm going to get into trouble.
This is what I heard. Yeah. I heard that when the 3 of them were learning Kabbalah, Rav Dov Schwartzman, Rav Hutner, and Rav Moshe, every now and then they would send him out of the room because what they were doing was too deep for him.
It could be. I never heard that story.
That's what I heard.
I never heard the story, but I do know is that those two became a dmus for Rav Moshe, and Rav Moshe would learn Kabbalah with Rav Hutner at night, sometimes all night long. I describe one of the stories in the book, which I heard directly from the family, and then he would walk home from Rav Hutner's house, which I think was in Wunsdorf, back to his home in Bayvagan, dancing, literally dancing home in the wee hours of the morning from just the exhilaration of what he had learned from Rav Hutner. And interestingly, he came out never quoted Rav Hutner. If you notice, from all the Shurim, he did not quote from Rav Hutner. And I heard a reason why. I'm not going to say who told me, because I'm not sure this is supposed to be quoted. But he said that when he gave over his Torah, Rav Hutner had a specific style, and Rav Moshe wanted to have his specific style. So he didn't want to become like Rav Hutner plus, so to speak. So he just... It's
an interesting thing that you're saying, because I remember seeing an article in the Mishpacha where they were going to write about...
We caught you.
What? No, I just read the introduction because anything that will aggravate me in the Mishpacha I read. But it started, it was very interesting. Apparently Rav Hutner's Purim was unbelievable.
Right.
And so the guy who's writing the article, he says, I spoke to, about Rav Hutner. He goes, you can't write about his Purim. You can't describe it. And he went to 3 Talmidim, and they all said the same thing. You can't describe it.
Right.
He goes, but basically what he said is, well, I have to write an article, so I'm going to do it anyway. But the fact that they would say that about Rav Hutner's Purim, I never heard that about anybody. Like, you can't describe it. No one ever said that about the Brisker Rav. Nobody said about it. There was something about Rav Hutner that was on a different level than everything else.
Hence,
that's why Rav Moshe can't really...
There's no Oscar biography of Rav Hutner.
Oh, how come? I never realized that.
Yeah, and there's no...
Did you ask Jonathan?
Well, it's the same kind. Rav Hutner was listen, Rav Moshe and Rav Hutner have a lot in common in that sense, that they were both way larger than life, and it was very hard to put down in words the way that they thought and the way that they did things and the way that they ran things. Hence, I hid behind other people in my sefer.
All right, so when does you got into him when you ended up in Mishkan Torah?
Yeah, so that was...
Now, this was a a moment in history
Right.
that has never been before or since. Right? Now, the way I understand the story is that Rabbi Elephant in Itri was a black hole, and he would suck up everybody into Itri. Anyone who had any potential, he would right away hire him and come to Itri. Yeah? And it wasn't only that, because I heard when I was in Chavetz Chaim in 1975, they said, be careful when you come to the airport, because Rabbi Elephant would stand there with a van. And when you would come out, he'd say, where are you going? So you say, I'm going to the Mir, I'm going to here. And the man goes, I said, come, I'll get you a ride. Then come in and he would drive him to Hitch. And they're like, what's this? He goes, oh, you just stay the night. We'll give you supper, and tomorrow you can go. And that's how he would recruit at the airport. And he had everybody there. But there was too many big fish in a small pond. Right. And eventually they broke off and made their own yeshiva.
Many, many, many yeshivas came out of Itri.
Yeah, so that one was Mishkan Torah,
right,
which at the time, when I remember, was called Splittree.
Right.
Because it split off of Itri, so it was Splittree.
Right.
And
Rav Moshe was one of the people that Elephant sucked in. Rav Moshe adored Rabbi
Elephant. He was there. Well. He was there in Itri?
Yeah. Rav Moshe.
Tzvika Shalevsky was there.
Yeah, and Reb Tzvi. They were all there. Shmuel Auerbach. They were all there at the same time. When I came, literally, I saw these are the Gedolim in your neighborhood. I could not keep up. I could not keep up with the amount of incredible personalities.
Now, was he there at the beginning? Because I thought he came in later into Mishkan Torah.
Okay, so was that the Moshe in Itri was a short kufa, but later on, what happened was when Itri split and became Splittree, Mishkan Torah, Rav Dovid Achenstein and Rav Moshe Ram, Tzaddik Zichron Levrach, when they built it, they knew that for the yeshiva to become a major brand name yeshiva, they needed a scoop. And Rav Moshe Ram was related to Rav Moshe, our Rav Moshe, and it was a period of time where Rav Moshe was available. It was just coming back from Stanford, those Stanford years in America. So he chat Rav Moshe, and he became a magnet. That's how later on Mishkan Torah had a brisker koil, where my chavrusa Dovid Kamenetsky. That's how everyone came to Rav Moshe through Mishkan. And Mishkan was this extraordinary 7 years, of which 6.5 Rav Moshe was there, and produced an insane amount of people in chinuch and education.
For example?
We just mentioned Rabbi Tatz and Rabbi Becha, okay, and Rabbi Karsh and Rabbi Zerfin Zichron Livracha, and Rabbi Wogelanter and Rabbi Yuckelson, and all these people went out and changed the world. This is
Itri did not do this.
Itri produced in Eretz Yisrael. They did. Eretz Yisrael, Rosh Hashivas, a lot of them came out of there.
Really?
Yeah, so if you ask who are the two biggest people in Hilchos Shabbos today, it was Rabbi Galber, who wrote with the Orchos Shabbos, and Rabbi Petrover, Moshe Petrover. They were all there. Everyone was there. A lot of the big Rosh Hashivas today went through Itri. Not just Panovich and not just Brisk and Chevron, right? It was a lot of them came through Itri. But Mishkan Torah, literally the ones, especially in Kirov, it produced a huge amount of people that went through.
Now, how did that happen? Why did that? That's not, no yeshiva does that. No yeshiva looks at itself as, I'm training the leaders of the next door in Habotzes HaTorah.
I never really thought about it.
Because everyone who came out of there all said the same thing. It was somehow the message we got in Mishkan Torah that we need you to go out and save Klal Yisrael.
Right. Rav Moshe was massive in giving over that message. He built us like a stable of horses, but each one unique and special, and expected us to go out and change the world. So
that was Rav Moshe was the impetus of that?
Rosh Zayda Grubenstein was a full partner in that, and all the other staff.
I'm surprised because he didn't seem like a Habotzes HaTorah Kiruv kind of guy. He was Panovich Reb Chatzkel,
Yeah, but in this particular area, you're right. Okay, yeah, it was as they say in Facebook, it was complicated. but Rosh was a big lover of Ramesha. He used to sit at Ramesha's feet like a Talmud, even though they were together on the same staff. And he held of everything that Ramesha was doing in yeshiva, except for when they didn't.
Well, they had Rav Moshe. They had Rav Meltzer.
Yeah,
and they had Rav Gurwitz.
Exactly, and all these people were.
These are some of the biggest names.
Some of the biggest names. The first year that we got married, so Debbie and I, we made a a Purim Seder, we invited all the young couples, and Rav Moshe Zelig had a fit. He said, there's no way that you have all these young couples there at a Purim Seder where people are drunk. And he asked me to cancel it. And then Rabbi Shapira found out that I was canceling that Purim Seder, and he felt it was very important for the wives to have such a thing. And he said the following words. He said, if my Talmidim don't know how to behave in such a situation, I have failed.
Wow.
And it was a beautiful Purim, and it was very separate, and the men on one side, women, and yeah. So that period of time, those 7 years, Rabbi Moshe was mashkia. First of all, he was not that well known, and he gave us no end of time. He was
never that well known, even at the end. A lot of people didn't know who he was. Even people who may have heard of his name. People were not familiar with.
He was not.
It wasn't like your average gadol.
He wasn't the Binestasha,
I don't think he had a card.
Exactly. Listen, he was never part of a moetzis, never part of a. He was never a rosh yeshiva of a mainstream yeshiva by choice. He was offered to be, but he felt much more comfortable working with our kids and working with.
He did. Someone made a cheshbon. He gave about 40 shiurim a week.
Yeah.
It might have been more, but I'm not counting the secret ones in the middle of the night. But
no, we are counting the secret ones in the middle of the night. Without that, it's 30. That's how it works.
But he couldn't do that and be a Rosh Yeshiva.
Yeah. So at
one of the stories, all your koiches have to go into yeshiva.
He told Rabbi Levitan, this was after Mishkan days.
And that's the reason people said MTJ was never that successful, because Rav Moshe was too busy taking care of Klal Yisrael.
Rabbi Levitan said to Rav Moshe, if you would invest more in your yeshiva, the yeshiva would become a much bigger yeshiva. This was the yeshiva that he built after Mishkan. So Rav Moshe said, what?
What yeshiva was that?
Honestly, I've forgotten the name.
Okay. So it really made a big impact.
Massive impact. He did it together with his son-in-law, was the one that ran it. So Rav Moshe said, "Ani lo yachol letzamtzem et hamoach sheli be-20 dapim shel baba mitzvah." I can't just put myself into 20 blot of. He couldn't just become this, put his whole thing into a yeshiva. So when he was in the yeshiva, he was fully in the yeshiva, and then he would do his thing and give all the shiurim and do everything else that made him Rav Moshe. And Rav Moshe felt that was what Hashem wanted him to do, to be extremely eclectic and broad, and to be able to have that.
He knew everything.
Yeah. I wanted to share with you that you mentioned about he had a mahalach and everything.
Yeah.
So I did not fully give justice. I have a chapter on special needs kids. Now you think special needs kids.
Rabinowitz.
Exactly.
We'll talk about that.
Said he has 30, 40 hours of tapes just on the topic of special needs kids. And I've been begging Rav Baruch, so if you're listening, okay, Rav Baruch, if you're listening, okay, to make it into a book, not a Rav Moshe's Torah, but you, Rav Baruch, taking Rav Moshe's Torah and make it into a user-friendly, so any parent with these wonderful children, one of them is, of course, my granddaughter, Princess Chani, so they would get proper hadracha and proper hashkafa. So I just wrote like one chapter of that famous letter that he wrote, of which Shmuel Kamenetsky said, you think a Rishon had written these words, because there was so much Torah and so much Chacham in just a few amount of words. But what was incredible about this topic of special needs children, Rav Moshe had a mahalach from the very practical, how you raise them, how you teach them, whose whole thing is you got to treat them like normal children, exactly with any other kid. Don't give them special names, give them a regular name. That was my personal story. That's how the chapter begins. Princess Chani is named after her grandfather. And Rav Moshe felt it was a tremendous chus. Her grandmother. It was a tremendous chus, because it was a revach naki. The special needs kid is a child that doesn't sin and is a purveyor of joy and simcha, makes everyone smile, makes everyone happy, and pure schus for the nifteres. And at the same time, he had layers and layers of depth. What was a special needs kid in terms of Kabbalah and what's going to happen when Mashiach comes, and in terms of the extraordinary elevation that the neshamas had trapped in this body. He had a mahalach in what it was all about, and most beautiful of all, because I only heard it from him, is this belief that just like at Har Sinai, everyone was healed at Har Sinai. So when Mashiach comes and there's the process to matak in the world, so that chromosome that causes downs will be taken away, and we'll find the true nature of Princess Chani. And this is something that only one person could have, that extraordinary brain and the medical dimension. He actually had a theory about how science today can actually cure Down syndrome, which Rav Baruch told me that there was an article, I think, in the New York Times that came up with similar ideas that Rav Moshe had been theorizing all along about how this could be fixed with this whole thing called chromosomes. I have not used the word chromosome in a sentence since I was in high school, but that Rav Moshe was able to do all of this stuff.
He told a story,
Yeah.
Baruch, where somebody was coming to work with his kid, and
Not Shlomo.
And so whoever this is comes in, and she starts putting on rubber gloves. So the kid took her bag and brought it to the door, like, bye.
Yeah.
So she couldn't do anything, So he told the story to Rav Moshe, and he says, because he knows who loves him.
Right.
He knows who loves him.
I did not put this. I need to get back to Rav Baruch because I heard once from him that Rav Moshe from the airport went to the house and he sat down on the floor for 45 minutes playing with this child.
Mm-hmm.
So I need to get the exact story correct. But somebody just told me over in his name that he had 45 minutes to play with the child on the floor. You know, much of ahava and patience and the ability to connect to a little child, to be able to do that.
Now, you said he was never the same since his daughter died.
Yeah, that was.
When was that?
So this was, he came to our yeshiva in 1981.
I heard this from Loza Langzim the same.
Yeah. Afterwards, he became much more a softie. It was a game changer.
Which is pretty funny. Because most people who meet him would not say, what a softie.
Yeah, absolutely.
What a sweetheart. Yeah. But evidently he was much more charitz.
I got slapped much less. No, but it was. He became more like, Zeta-like. And
when was that?
Was it 1982? I think it was. Yeah. During that, when Yehuda Milcha was born, he's turning 40 soon. That help me out. Okay, that was when she was in her last months. And Ramosha took it very, very badly. I don't remember anyone after the death of a child of his stature becoming a broken man. He was a broken man.
People describe it to me that he was fighting HaKadosh Baruch Hu to save her life.
Yeah.
And he was sure he was going to be successful. And he was shocked that he wasn't able to do it.
Yeah.
In fact, when he was sitting Shiva, someone told me, he says there are three partners in creation, the Gemara says. Mother, father, and son. Because I didn't agree to this.
Right. It's the famous the Ritva. The Ritva says that you can't break up a shutvus without the other side's agreeing unless you know it's a schus gamor. So Ramesha said, I can only assume that this is a schus gamor for Shulamis. But we just mentioned Reb Baruch Rabinowitz. Reb Baruch once came in to where Ramesha was in Brooklyn. He walked in. This was when Shulamis was very, very sick. He walked into a room where Ramesha was davening a Shemona Esrei on his own. I don't remember exact numbers he gave, but he davened a 40-minute Shemona Esrei, of which about 10 minutes was spent on Rafa'enu.
Which, by the way, for those who are not familiar, Rav Moshe did not daven a very long Shemona Esrei.
Except for when he did.
I'm saying, but it's a rule.
During that
regular. There are certain people who always do these very long Shemona Esrei.
He would daven
when we used to daven after the shir, he was one of the first ones done.
Yeah. Okay, that is correct. But during that tkufa in Mishkan HaTorah, he was davening 40-minute Shemona Esrei Geseder during that period. And that tkufa, when you remember the story where a guy came out to him and says, Rebbe, what sugi were you learning in America? So Moshe looked at him and says, I was learning the sugi of Yisurim, right? Poor guy, I felt sorry for this fellow. I was learning the sugi of Yisurim. That's the pasuk that he used. So he was arguing with Hashem and Rafa'enu.
Right.
He says, aber Eibishter, I can't, my Yiddish is not so good. He's deine Tochter, right?
He says this?
This is Ramesha was arguing with God. She's your daughter.
I mean, how do you know the story?
From Rabinowitz. He came in and watched him davening.
And he heard him say this.
Yeah. But he's your daughter as well. He's your daughter as well. And it's just so powerful. And the only other person I know that used to daven like was the Kloisenberger Rebbe. And Ramosha told me to tell my Talmidim and Talmidas not to daven that way. you should not be talking to Hashem about Shemona Esrei except for the end, the very end of Shemona Esrei, before you take you 3 steps back, because he felt that our generation doesn't have that koyach to talk to Kodesh Baruch Hu, it's a masa and matam, like Avram Avinu by Sodom. But when he was alone, it was just him and the Kodesh Baruch Hu, and no one was watching except for Rabbi Rabinowitz, who had sneaked in. So he was fighting the Malach HaMavis, and he was arguing with the Kodesh Baruch Hu to keep Shalom alive. And another thing I did not put into the book, because Rabbi Elazar Langston, who was there, is that at the Shiva, the Levaya, he wanted to jump into the kever with her. They had to pull him back.
I heard that too.
Right. And then after the Levaya was over, he pulled himself together and he called over all the Talmidim that were there, and he said, tonight, one of the Chabura has a chasana. He said, you have to promise me, I can't go, but you have to promise you're going to dance there as if you saw nothing here today. Give it your all.
That was his heart.
Yeah.
I heard another version of that as he was getting into the car, he saw that Talmud who was getting married. And he went over and said a few words to him, and then went back in the car.
I never heard that.
And they says, remember, he couldn't talk. He was like, so how'd you do that? He says, he's getting married tonight. I didn't want him to feel like I wasn't happy for him.
Yeah.
That's
unbelievable.
That's next level.
Yeah.
Next level.
So, yeah.
All right, Rabina. So what do you want everybody to take away from this book? First, we want them to buy the book.
Yeah.
Where is it available?
At all your local books. By the way, I was just told that...
Not on Amazon?
There's 600 pre-ordered on Amazon. The boats should be arriving on American shores very soon.
Oh.
There's 600 pre-ordered on Amazon, which is like a Feldheim site. This is pretty impressive. And they told me this 2 weeks ago. So, yeah, I mean, look, what I want most of all is that your listeners who don't know who Moshe is, that just heard about him from Rav Tetz and Rabbi Hartman and all the famous Talmidim that he had, you will be able to understand the depth of his Torah. I worked very hard to have 26 essays of his Torah in a language that everyone can appreciate it. And
it was checked over by an adult.
Yeah, it was checked over by an adult. Yesterday, I got a WhatsApp from Suki Berry. Remember, it's from Suki. Suki says that I went to get your sefer, and they already ran out. And he says the owner of the Sfarim store says Menachem Nitzl is a ganef. He says, why? He says, yeah, I took one of those books home, and I was up till 3 a.m. Gezel Shena. Okay, so I did it. I tried to make it Dava Shavel Chol Nefesh, and at the same time to try and get a picture of who the man was by trying to get as many people as I could get hold of. There's about 200 people, I quote, telling over their stories in their language to try and a vision of who this awesome Rebbe was.
Meir Strobel had me speak in Baltimore after he was nifter. And I said, I'm not an authority in Reb Moshe. I'm not one of the Talmidim. He goes, no, nobody is. Everyone can only give their picture.
Correct.
Like their little snapshot of Reb Moshe. So share yours, And I really tried to just share my own experiences. But I listen to other people talk. I don't know who they're talking about.
Yeah.
I can't even relate to it. I don't know what they're saying. And that's how big he was.
I want to ask you, Dovid, these crazy times, what do you think Rav Moshe would have said? That is one of the questions that have been asked me. Rav Moshe spoke so much about Yishmael and everything that's going on, and not just Yishmael, just the whole breakdown of our youth and all the things that we're dealing with. What do you think he would have said?
He would have said what he said that Sukkot after the Twin Towers went down. This is Gog and Magog. And he says, and when it's over, you saw how the Twin Towers went? That's how everything is going to go. There won't be 2 rocks on top of each other. Everything is going down. That's what he said to anybody. And I'll never forget, because I was there, and someone said, I thought the Holocaust was the Gog and Magog. He says, obviously not, because Mashiach didn't come. But now it's starting. And he said once, the reason people are going off the derech, you find kids going off the derech from nice families for no good reason, is the Gemara in Brachos that says that the capital of Avshalom was put next to the capital of Gog and Magog, because in case you think that the nations of the world will not turn against their father in heaven,
Right.
A son will turn against his father. He goes, the fact that you see this is a simon that we're in Gog and Magog. And he would tell it to anybody who would listen. This is the beginning. And I remember I said to him, yeah, but there are so many people who today, their keshers to Yiddishkeit is only because of the Holocaust. He goes, Hashoah haya klum. I said, klum? He says, mato mer Jewish identity? he says, Dovid, when Mashiach comes, everyone's going to do tshuva. And he added another time, and not like tshuva we do on Yom Kippur, but for Merosh Kod Kodoy ad Kaf Ragla, the whole total tshuva. He says, Dovid, hayot Hashoah, asita tshuva? Did you do tshuva? He says, after this, you will do tshuva.
Right.
So everything that was happening, he looked at it as a continuum from the Twin Towers. And he was, I remember the Thursday night share afterwards, he couldn't find words. He just kept going like this, like how everything just went down like that. He says, it's just unbelievable. It doesn't make sense, and he just said this was the beginning. And I'll tell you what's interesting is then I went to Rav Bowman on that same sukkahs.
Yeah.
And he said, and I said, Rebbe, what's going on? And he was nifta shortly afterwards. And he says, Dovid, this is Gog and Magog. Like, now when you find Ray Bowman and Rav Moshe on the same page, because they weren't usually, So
I remember America went into Iraq with Saddam Hussein. It was a Shana Rabbah.
Yeah.
So then Rav Bowman told me the same thing. Maybe it's the beginning. Shana Rabbah is when Gog and Magog is supposed to start.
Well, Rav Moshe was unequivocal.
Right.
This is the beginning of the end, and just watch it happening. So I don't think he would have been surprised by what took place. And like you say, Hoshana Rabbah is the final Yom Adin, and the day after this happens. So it's, there's a, he says, this is the beginning. And I'm afraid to say it, but I don't think this is the end. And every time you think, okay, we're turning the corner. How are they still shooting missiles at us from Gaza? How is it possible? We blew up everything. And they still have more missiles that they're pulling out from someplace. And every day you see 4 soldiers are killed, 6 soldiers are killed. It's such a pachad. My son-in-law is there. I mean, we're terrified all the time. When you look at what's going on in the situation, you ask, how could this be going on? And I just hear Rabbi Moshe saying, Zeraka hatchala. This is the beginning.
But I think Rabbi Moshe would have been driving us crazy to make sure that we
daven.
Yeah.
That's what he always would say. He says the koyach of Yishmael is bapeh, and we have to defeat him bapeh. And he would say the other thing is Mesiras Nefesh.
Right.
That they have Mesiras Nefesh, and we have to have more Mesiras Nefesh than them. We have to have the Mesiras Nefesh of a suicide bomb. In our Torah, in our mitzvahs, and our davening. And he was just, and it was worse than that because he described the suicide bombers as at the end of Parshas Toldos, where Yishmael marries into Esav, and the two are united together. He says that is,
Amalek.
That's Amalek. That's total destruction.
Amalek is the first suicide bomber. The first. That's he used to say that Yishmael's kayach of suicide bombing comes from that Amalek side that he had. Yeah. Hi, can we finish with something a little bit more positive, happier? I want to thank
Woody Allen once said, he goes, I want to leave you with a positive thought, but I don't have one, so I'll give you 2 negative ones. Because 2 negatives make a positive. Anyway,
I want to say something positive.
Go ahead.
I want to say the last time I saw you.
You brought up the war. I wasn't going to talk about it.
No, but I think about it a lot. What would Moshe have said? It's extraordinary, a lot. And when I'm dealing with NCSY and what the kids are going through and the challenges they're going through, what would Moshe have said? I always had him to ask my questions to, and he's not there.
That's probably the biggest hole in my soul.
Yeah, and I have to say,
not only because I have nobody to turn to, but because when you have a question. Ray Brown, he told me how he first started coming. He went and asked Moshe a bunch of questions, and he would yell at him, and he'd say, "I don't care if you yell at me. He said, I have I have very high self-esteem. Yell at me, call me names. Just give me an answer. Just answer my questions, because nobody can answer my questions.
But Moshe could.
Everything.
Moshe always could. Moshe always had that clarity and gave you exact hadracha. And now we have to somehow figure things out ourselves.
I don't know how.
Yeah, we have no choice. Who
is filling that role today?
So I go to so many people. It's not the same. I go to Aaron Lapiansky. I was zocher to make a kesha. I go to Rabbi Gershonfeld. I speak things over with my chaver, with people like, Reb Zev, Kivatatz, all these people, just to, but at the end of the day, I realize a little bit I'm on my own. I have to find those shoulders after almost 40 years with him to give advice and to try the best to give the hadracha. And
I got a call from a teenage girl whose father Nebuch died in a plane crash. And she says, what does HaKadosh Baruch Hu want from me now?
Right.
And I said, the hero's journey is alone. That's why Frodo has to lose Gandalf. That's why Harry Potter has to lose Dumbledore.
Right.
The hero's journey ultimately has to be alone. You have to do it yourself. Right. I said, HaKadosh Baruch Hu now is putting you on your hero's journey.
Right.
And that's where you have to go. And to me, the fact that someone like me is taken seriously by Klal Yisrael as someone who has something to say. When I remember Reb Moshe, I say, Mom, you're talking about a Dur Yosem. And you got to come and ask me. And people are turning to me for advice. It's unbelievable, because I would go to Reb Moshe, and I was the smallest. I wasn't even a Talmud. I was just a little kid peeking in the window, when he was talking, looking over to see what was going on, and I would go to the real Talmidim and ask them questions and things like that, But I have a shadow of a shadow of a shadow.
I tell you what, between all of us, if me and you and all our chaverim and all our chaverim and all the Talmidim that he had in Russia and in South Africa as well, and South America and Mexico, across the fruited plains of America, all over France, together, biyachad, we can try and recreate in our own little way what he was trying to do. That's what he wanted. That's
I guess we could bring it all together.
Yeah. I want to say one more thing. I want to thank Reb Moshe and Shemaim, because I don't know if you remember the last time I saw you, but it was quite a while. It was in Brooklyn. Okay, we were fressing together, I think maybe. I
never fress.
No. We were eating Orsamer sponsored sushi, if you remember, in Brooklyn.
I never have eaten sushi in my life. So it can't be.
Sushi was my choice.
Okay.
What were you eating? Do you remember what you were eating at that point then? You were there with
probably
your
food.
Okay.
Not raw fish and sticky rice. Why would I do that?
And I always think to myself, it's ridiculous. Yeah. I have to come all the way.
You think about the derech dinner.
Yeah, derech dinner. Yeah. I live literally a few hundred feet away from you. And I just... It's insane that we're so
true.
busy.
You see people in America more often than you see people in Israel.
It's not normal. And so thank you, Rabbi Moshe, upstairs, right? That because of the incredible Rabbi Orlofsky show, I get to be back in this beautiful, where we used to learn Chavrusa for many years.
Yeah.
And all the fun memories and the Purim's together and stuff like that. And there's Hashem Yisbarach.
And the thousands and thousands of people who are hearing maybe about Rabbi Moshe, certainly on this level for the first time.
Yeah.
And Mirza Hashem, they'll go and buy the book, assuming they can find it someplace.
Amen.
And, and capture that essence. Our good friend Yaakov Ber, he had pictures on his wall of a smiling Rebbe Yoshev and a smiling Reb Moshe, and certain Gedolim who were, you think of them in terms of your Shemaim, like your picture over there, and he caught them smiling. I mean, he used to make them laugh. They didn't make him laugh. They just smiled when they saw him. He was once at one of these rallies, and Rav Bronsdorfer was up there, and he sees him and goes, "Oh, Rav Yaakov!" Like he's waving to him from the things, So Reb Moshe had this thing where you just think about him, and I felt like this was a person who loved me and loved my children, cared about me, and I was nobody. I was not, like I said, I said, "You're going to kill the jester." He goes, "It's really very funny that anyone thinks I would ask you to represent me." I was a little person, but I'd say, "Listen, I'm having a problem with this kid. I'm having a problem with that kid." He says, "Bring him by. We'll talk right away."
That's right.
You know, within 24 hours, he made time. I don't know how it's possible. My son was trying to get into a particular yeshiva. He called the guy over and over again. The guy wasn't picking up the phone. And I asked him once about it, and he said, I called him. He said, look, I called him 5 times, He's chasing down some Rosh Yeshiva to get my kid into a yeshiva. Yeah, there's a hole in my soul.
Tell me about it.
All right. Well, Ravinus, we so appreciate this and just a chance to be able to talk about Rabbi Moshe. And that's it for this week, or weeks, I guess. How long are we? How long is this?
Almost 2 hours.
All right. Well, I guess it's a 2-parter. But in any event, until next time, if you want to find out more about the show, you can go to my website, RabbiOrlofsky.com. You can sponsor an episode. You can sponsor a question and answer, which we're not going to have in these 2 episodes. You can sponsor a Parsha in 5. You can sponsor, you join one of our online shiurim and tefillah in Mesilas Yesharim and Daf Yomi. And you can download our theme song. I have a theme song.
I want to hear it.
Yeah, you have to watch the podcast. Lenny Solomon, when he was on the show, he says, I'll write your theme song. And I have my own theme song. My mother used to say when I would start complaining, she goes, oh, that's your new theme song? And I say, no, I have my own theme song. Thank you very much. So you can download the theme song. There are articles. There's all kinds of things you can do over there. And that's it. And until next time, I am Dovid Orlofsky.
I am Menachem Nissel.
And this has been the Rabbi Orlofsky Show.
Give you a hug. I want to give you a hug. Miss you, brother.
All right, brother.
It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Torah and Simcha, ready to go. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Knowledge and wisdom will help you grow. Lots of fun in every episode. And we don't have to rhyme. No, we don't. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show on RabbiOrlofsky.com. Torah, anytime, YouTube and more. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Torah and Simcha, ready to go. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Till next time, till we meet again. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show.